Majority Leader.
We're called the world's greatest deliberative body for a good reason. When the rubber meets the road, when the hour is critical, when a historic precedent needs to be set, the United States Senate most often finds its way to doing what is right.
Senator McConnell is the ultimate senator.
There's no debate whatsoever that he's been one of the most effective Senate leaders of all time.
Because he's ingrained himself in the issues facing rural Kentucky.
He works so hard for their issues, to advance their interests.
He's the shrewdest political operator that I've seen.
That he changed the trajectory of my life.
He's really the senior senator for rural America.
Well, I never dreamed I would be the longest serving Kentucky senator in U.S. history. And I certainly never thought I'd be the longest serving Republican Senate leader in history.
You have this guy who from 1984 forward has taken the time to understand the issues and the values and the things that motivate rural America, rural Kentucky.
I always remind people, every senator has a vote, but some are more significant than others. And I've worked my way through the process here and put us in a unique position to punch above our weight.
To understand Mitch McConnell's tenacity in the U.S. Senate, look at the tenacity of his parents. His dad, Addison Mitchell, AM for short, his mom, Dean. It was 1944 when their 2-year-old, Mitch, contracted polio.
We happened at that particular point to live in Alabama. My dad was in Europe fighting the Germans. And fortunately, Warm Springs, which Roosevelt had set up as a polio treatment center, was an hour's drive from where we were.
Mitch's upper left leg paralyzed. His mother learned physical therapy at Warm Springs, then administered it several times a day, doctors instructing her not to let Mitch walk for 2 years.
Can you imagine keeping a 2-year-old off their feet for 2 years? And that was widely credited with allowing my leg to come back enough to where I didn't have to wear a brace, and I had a normal childhood.
And he talked about his mom being patient and tenacious. And when I think about him and the impact he has had, not only on Kentucky, but on our nation, I see him as the most patient and tenacious leader that I've ever witnessed. And so I think that apple did not fall far from that tree.
You know what I think I probably learned during that is that, everybody has adversity. There are always bumps in the road. And if you just keep your nose to the grindstone and keep on working, the chances are things will turn out all right.
The McConnell family would move first to Georgia, then to Louisville, where McConnell's father worked in Rubbertown. Young Mitch dreamed of being a big league ball player. Instead, his talent for politics blossomed at DuPont Manual High School, where he collected key endorsements to win his first election as student body president, elected again at the University of Louisville, and again at the University of Kentucky Law School.
I was a summer intern in the office of Senator John Sherman Cooper in 1964. 20 years later, I was sworn into the seat that Senator Cooper had.
Senator John Sherman Cooper was his role model. Today, Senator McConnell pays that example forward. Since its founding in 1991, the McConnell Center at the University of Louisville has mentored hundreds of McConnell scholars, identifying young student leaders, introducing them to national and world leaders.
The mission of the center is to give these kids scholarships for the purpose of retaining that talent in the state of Kentucky. And I took that to heart.
Because of those experiences that I've had as a McConnell scholar and the friendship that I've had with the Majority Leader of the United States Senate, it's given me the strength and courage to run for public office myself.
I'm Majority Leader Senator Mitch McConnell, and this is the Washington Youth Tour.
Senator McConnell's time with our Kentucky Cooperative Youth Tour students is the highlight of their week. And I also want to thank Senator McConnell for the time he spends with us. When we come up there to discuss issues that impact our ratepayers and our cooperatives back home, he's always there to listen.
I remember 50 years ago when I was working in the Nixon White House, Senator Howard Baker of Tennessee said to me, you know, you ought to get to know that smart young legislative assistant for Marlowe Cook. Marlowe Cook was the new senator from Kentucky. Well, that smart young legislative assistant was Mitch McConnell.
After working in a law practice and as Deputy Assistant Attorney General in the Gerald Ford administration, McConnell's first try for political office ended with an upset victory. Elected Jefferson County Judge Executive in 1977 and again in 1981.
What he is really like is a guy who absolutely loves his work.
Larry Cox worked alongside McConnell for 30 years, first in Jefferson County, then for 26 years as Senator McConnell's state director, beginning with McConnell's biggest upset victory in the 1984 U.S. Senate race.
Back in 1984, most people didn't expect Mitch to win, but Mitch has a way of confounding everyone's expectations, and he did that year with determination and sheer hard work.
We immediately went to work when he went to the Senate looking after the conservation titles in the farm bills.
Went on the Agriculture Committee on day one.
Congratulate you on your nomination. Look forward to supporting it.
And it's fun to travel with him because he enjoys the people. He engages so closely with settings where he goes to hear about what the issues are.
He was focused on getting every commodity group in the state to endorse him, which was I don't think that ever happened before, certainly to a new senator that was a city boy.
Tobacco is going to be grown.
It's really remarkable the sense that he has of agriculture and what agriculture means, and actually understands the principles of farming and what we do.
Every time there's been an important issue in agriculture, Senator McConnell stepped up to the plate for us.
The best thing the government can do is to provide a generous transition payment to these growers on the way to the free market.
That's a historic piece of legislation that he pulled off.
That buyout allowed me as a farmer to keep my farm and stay on my farm because the payment was over the next 10 years, and so I was able to continue to farm and raise tobacco and cattle.
And the question was, what comes next? So in 2014 in the Farm Bill, I was able to put in pilot projects for industrial hemp.
Mitch is an important member of the Agriculture Committee and is a constant voice of reason and a master of strategy in the United States Senate. Last year, Mitch was the driving force behind legalizing hemp in the 2018 Farm Bill.
It was through his suggestion and gentle nudging, not so gentle nudging, that we are on the road we are on.
If not, but for McConnell being in his position as Senate Majority Leader, that issue remains on the sidelines, on the fringe, to languish forever.
So as I look back over my career, particularly as it relates to rural Kentucky, buying out the tobacco program, starting industrial hemp, and moving us into a whole different place.
For McConnell, the hemp legislation is not only an agricultural win, it's a nod to Kentucky history.
Where's Henry? Back here.
Henry Clay, the most influential senator of the 19th century, grew hemp. McConnell has studied the Kentucky statesman for more than 50 years.
What drives your passion about knowing about Henry Clay? I mean, because you...
Well, he's from Kentucky. Yeah. And, you know, when you're little, you said, I'd like to be like him when I grow up.
What we remember about Henry Clay is that he was always trying to put different people together to try to get a result for the larger number of people. I think that's what people will remember about Mitch McConnell as well.
Clay was the great compromiser. McConnell, this era's great deal maker. His agricultural wins join a long list of deals he has brokered, including a massive tax cut law, an overhaul of the criminal justice system, and critical fiscal deals with then-Vice President Joe Biden during the Obama administration.
My interactions with Mitch McConnell, he has always been very straightforward with me. To his credit, he has never made a promise that he couldn't deliver.
And as the senior member of the Appropriations Committee,
he brings home the bacon.
Even as the practice of earmarks ended in Washington, McConnell, as a Senate leader, has still found ways to make sure that worthy Kentucky projects get funding.
He controls the legislation that comes to the floor, and because of that, he has some great influence on what we get here in Kentucky.
There's still money going to states. The question is, which states will they go to?
And that's what leadership is about, and also the advantage. They have to come to you. Mitch McConnell is an appropriator when it really comes down to it.
In transportation, for example, Elaine has been Secretary of Transportation. This administration, speaking of rural Kentucky, felt that a lot of the transportation money had been disproportionately directed to coastal urban areas. So they've been trying to be more fair to rural and small town parts of the country.
He's always in the eye of the storm. He's never too hasty, never rash. He's very thoughtful, and he's constantly listening to all different points of view.
He thinks 18 moves ahead and has been a tremendous leader in the Senate and has used that influence and that clout, if you will, to help his home state.
Well, Mitch McConnell obviously is always looking out for Kentucky. It's one of his hallmarks here. And
he's been tremendously supportive of the miners in eastern Kentucky through training for displaced miners.
And Leader McConnell said, tell your brother not to worry about this. And right after that, the health care passed.
A couple years ago, we found ourselves in a bad spot, and Senator McConnell went to bat for us. If we would have not been able to continue that program, then basically the college would have to shut down.
Senator McConnell has meant the world to Western Kentucky, especially during the fight that we call freedom to fish.
And it's time to draw the line.
We've got a bill passed in the House, in the Senate, and signed by the President so that we can continue fishing below the dams. We're doing the things that we've got to have in order to win this battle against Asian carp. And I'm thankful for him, and I'm thankful for where he is in the Senate.
Time and time again, Senator McConnell has been there for the Kentucky Electric Cooperatives. When it comes to financing, making sure that it's available and sensible for us. When it comes to funding levels through USDA, that it's always available. Or having environmental regulations that make sense and aren't crippling to the ratepayers back in Kentucky.
He was crucial in establishing the two national wildlife refuges, the Clark's River, which has now been in place for 20 plus years, and the Green River National Wildlife Refuge in Henderson County.
For when Fort Knox realigned, when the Armor Board moved out, he was instrumental in making certain that Fort Knox still had a mission.
Leader McConnell has been extraordinary in helping our state address the opioid epidemic. There's been no one better equipped and capable of establishing Kentucky as not only one of the hardest hit states, but most importantly, a state that is emerging from this crisis with innovative solutions, a collaborative approach.
UK just got an $87 million grant, which we worked on as a result of opioid legislation that, as the majority leader, I schedule. That's what the majority leader gets to do, is to decide what you're going to do and what you're not going to do.
You think about all of the congressional leaders outside of McConnell who are from New York and California. For all of the urban folks who are running our politics and managing and directing our national political discourse, they still have to go see a Kentuckian, somebody who represents rural and middle America, to get anything done. And I think there's a lot of pride in that.
But the beauty of Mitch McConnell is that he embraces this image of the Grim Reaper of the Senate, and you know, he's not one who shies away from the criticism. But I think his record here will be discussed for a long time and taken apart, like on the Merrick Garland case where he blocked the President Obama's nomination. To Mitch McConnell, that's a great achievement. To a lot of Democrats, of course, it was unconstitutional and unfair, but he's fine with that.
The courts guard our rights, and the Senate guards our courts.
I mean, we just confirmed our 150th federal judge under President Trump.
It's my distinct privilege to introduce Judge Amaltha Parr of Kentucky.
When you become president, the most important thing you can do is federal judges. They say Supreme Court judges, but we have them too, but federal judges. And, you know, based on that, I think there's nobody that's done a better job ever than Senator Mitch McConnell.
And the cultural attitudes of Kentucky are better represented on the federal judiciary today because of Mitch McConnell.
I firmly believe that when the history books are written, he will be remembered as one of, if not our greatest Kentuckian. And as a graduate of Henry Clay High School, I know I'll take some heat in Lexington for saying that, but I truly believe that Leader McConnell of Louisville is our greatest Kentuckian.
What I love is a hard-working, honest people, and particularly rural and small-town folks who have the kind of values that I think have historically been good for this country and are somewhat under assault these days.
Senator McConnell is a champion for rural Kentucky, and the Kentucky Electric Cooperatives are honored to recognize him as this year's Distinguished Rural Kentuckian.
You know, thank you. Thank you to the co-ops for providing electricity to all these rural areas all across our state, and for all the other things you do, the youth programs and the other things you do to make Kentucky a wonderful place to live. We may be Republican, we may be Democrat, but we are Americans. We each have a responsibility to make the Senate function. And we each have a duty to work for the people who sent us here in serious times to get serious results.